item dealing with the I-580 access improvement project to the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. This is going to be presented by Chris.
Good morning, Vice Chair Bates and Commissioners. My name is Chris Bullock, Senior Project Delivery Manager for the Bay Area Toll Authority. I'm here to talk today about the I-580 Access Improvement Project. There are two items that we are asking the committee to take action on. The first is to authorize the Executive Director or his designee to negotiate and enter into a decision document with the California Department of Transportation regarding the scope of the improvements for this project. And then the second would be for a contract amendment for Nevada's design consultant to proceed ahead with the final design phase of the project, concurrently with the environmental planning phase of the project, or the PAE phase, use Caltrain's terminology. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and walk through a very simple PowerPoint that we put together to kind of outline this. I'm joined here today by Mr. Den Beckelini, the District 4 Deputy District Director, who is VADA's partner in developing these important projects for the region. So I will just remind everybody that Interstate 580 is a federal interstate, and so some of the challenges that are associated with that are that for the environmental planning phase, everything needs to be consistent with both CEQA and NEPA requirements to implement these proposed project improvements, and that Caltrans is the owner and operator and will ultimately have to approve all of the planned improvements. The goals for the project are quite simple. We want to reduce congestion on Interstate 580 in Marin County and also close the gap in the Bay Trail between Contra Costa and Marin counties, because there's a significant gap in that regional resource that we have. The major project elements consist of a third lane in eastbound direction from Sir Francis Drake Boulevard to Marine Street. Marine Street is the connection to Richmond Parkway within the city of Richmond. A 10-foot barrier separated bicycle pedestrian path on the upper deck. And then you can't see it on the slide, but the third bullet is actually an improved connection for bicycles and pedestrians in the city of Richmond to Point Bellotti. That is basically replacing the bicycle access that exists today that utilizes the shoulders of I-580. So the first project is the third lane in eastbound direction, the congestion relief element of the project. The initial plan is to implement this as a pilot project for a duration of 4 years that would utilize, that would be open to traffic during the weekday peak periods and evening. And there are some highway geometric improvements that are required for that, and we'll be talking about that just a little bit later in the presentation. One of the things when we were scoping the project is we were looking at the traffic volumes for that corridor along Interstate 580, and we were using those volumes, both the demand volumes, which are on the blue arrows, and the actual counts, which are the white numbers beneath them on the exhibits, to determine, what were the logical limits to propose for this third lane. And working with Caltrans highway operations staff, we arrived at the decision to go from Sir Francis Drake to Marine Street. And the reason that we had done that is kind of a rule of thumb would be that for many freeway lanes, you can kind of assume a capacity of around 1,800 vehicles per hour if you're not looking at ideal capacities. And so you can see that for this particular slide, we have about 1,500 vehicles that would like to access I-580 in the eastbound direction from Sir Francis Drake. We have about 2,000 vehicles that want to use the Interstate 580 in the eastbound direction. So when you combine those two, you start exceeding the actual capacity of the facility. And that is even exacerbated more once you start adding on the volumes from Main Street. Much of that traffic is actually using Francisco Boulevard because of the queues on 580. And so now once you reach the bridge, you're well over the capacity of a two-lane facility. This is on the other side of the bridge. This is within the city of Richmond. And as far as the termination of the third lane in eastbound direction, you can see that there is a significant volume. About a quarter of the vehicles that cross the bridge actually want to exit at Marine Street, many of those continuing on to Richmond Parkway. And so that was the reason that we felt this was a logical ending of the third lane, if you will, because at that point the resulting demand is less than what you would require for the 3 lanes that continue on to the east. Some of the geometric improvements that I mentioned, the first would be related to the Main Street on-ramp on the Marin side of the bridge. There's a short verge at that on-ramp today, and with the addition of a third lane, where you can you would be shortening that merge even further. So this is one of the areas that we're looking at trying to improve and not make an existing non-standard situation even worse. For the most part, there are no structural modifications required for the bridge. It really is a relatively simple restriping. Probably the biggest element that would need to be modified to the bridge would be the addition of intelligent transportation systems and mounting that equipment to the bridge to actually allow for the peak period use operation. So the signing and the arrows and dynamic message signing that says when the lane is open and when it's closed would be the main portion that would be required for the bridge itself. And probably the most significant geometric improvement that would need to be undertaken would be the reconstruction of the retaining wall on the Contra Costa side or the City of Richmond side of the bridge. If you can imagine what we're looking at in this particular picture is on the far left you have a ramp that's coming on from Stenmark Drive, and then you have the 2 lanes that are coming from the eastbound direction of 580. And then where you see the shoulder on the right-hand side of the photograph adjacent to the wall is where we would be placing the third lane. But you can imagine if you were a vehicle traveling along that shoulder, that would be very difficult to see cars or vehicles around that right-hand curve. And so the proposal is to actually remove that existing retaining wall and construct another one further offset from Interstate 580. The good news is that there's actually right-of-way at this location to do that, and the right-of-way acquisition would most likely would not be required. This is just basically showing where the existing wall is and where the new wall would be. You can see that it is set further back, the new wall being in green and the existing in orange. This is a little bit more detail on the what we call horizontal stopping sight distance. There's also a vertical stopping sight distance component. And, basically, what you're trying to achieve is to be able to see a 6-inch object in the road in a far enough advance to be able to actually stop. And so you can see that if we were to not reconstruct that retaining wall, you would reduce the speed at which you could actually see that object and still stop from about 50 miles an hour to 43. And the current proposal is to accommodate a design speed of 55 miles an hour, which would result in a slightly higher wall than exists today. The other component that we talked about that I wanted to mention today was the improved connection on the Contra Costa side of the bridge for bicycles and pedestrians. Currently, what you're looking at in blue would be where bicyclists can access the shoulder for Interstate 580 on the right-hand side of the aerial photograph. The green is the proposed improved bicycle pedestrian path that would connect to the bridge. Currently, there is no barrier separation between the bicyclists and motor vehicles. This would be a permanent barrier separated facility that we would be proposing for the Contra Costa side to replace the bicycle access that would be lost with the addition of the third lane in the eastbound direction. These are a couple renderings of what that path connection might look like. It's a decorative railing fence. And then the other major element, or the second portion of the project, is the bicycle pedestrian path on the Richmond San Rafael upper deck. We're proposing to separate the bicycles and pedestrians. It's a bi-directional path that's 10 foot wide by a movable barrier system. The details of which we're still kind of working on exactly what that looks like. One option would be similar to the system that's being installed on the Berkeley Bridge, or that was installed on the Berkeley Bridge, excuse me. This is a rendering of what that 10-foot path would look like on the upper deck. We did entertain some ideas of some narrower path widths, which would still allow for a vehicular shoulder, but we felt that to accommodate both bicycles and pedestrians, that this was the best option to accommodate the most users. Another major element of the project will be to be able to handle incidents in the third lane, and also as well on the upper deck for the bicycle pedestrian path. So we're hoping to, or we plan to implement additional CCTV cameras and incident management strategies to not necessarily unduly burden motorists due to the removal of the shoulder on the upper deck for vehicles in the westbound direction. The merge from the toll plaza, this photograph is looking west as you're entering the bridge heading into Marin County. Will have to be reconfigured to allow for the additional 10-foot path at the beginning of the bridge, and that's something that we're working on with Caltrans design and working on the details of how that connection would actually take place. I do want to spend just a couple minutes talking about the budget. The two line items that you see was what was initially allocated in the data budget. You can see that we had a $17 million cost for the third lane in eastbound direction, and that was from the Transportation Authority of Marin's feasibility study that CAM completed to kind of reinitiate these set of projects. The current estimate, the $30 million, includes that improved connection on the Contra Costa side of the bridge, and that was not necessarily included in the original $17 million data budget. The bidirectional bike path, the basis of that $40 million figure was a 2007 draft project study report that data completed that was ultimately not adopted. Took that number and then escalated the cost from 2007 dollars to today's dollars. And in reality, that probably was a very conservative assumption in the fact that we probably haven't really seen that level of escalation from the 2007 report. So you can see that the actual costs that we're projecting today are lower than what was budgeted last June. And then the other major element of this estimate that you can see for the data budget, we included $13 million of operational costs, and that was assumed that we were moving the barrier on a daily basis. I think the intent for the movable barrier in the upper deck is that we actually move it very infrequently, or as infrequently as possible, to not incur those operational costs. This is the project timeline that we have outlined. One of the things that we did do, or some of the things that we've got going for us as far as the project schedule, would be that we are hoping to actually accelerate these project timelines from what we're showing right here. And some of the reasons that we feel that we're able to do that is that we do have the funding in place for these improvements. We've got the design team on board, and with the action that we're asking you to take today, we would like to have that authorization to go ahead and begin with the final design. There's no right-of-way required, which we all know can lead to delays for projects. With the decision document that we work with the department to kind of outline and start to lay out, we have a pretty good agreement on the scope of the project. And I think ultimately the responsibility really rests with Gavin now to basically develop the quality work products that Caltrans is expecting for us to move forward with these products, or with these projects as quickly as possible. One of the things that I did want to mention as far as the two different timeline schedules that you see, there was an effort to determine whether or not we should actually separate the two projects for the environmental clearance phase of the project. And ultimately, because the upper deck bike path is pretty clearly eligible for a categorical exemption on the CEQA side and a categorical exclusion on the NEPA side, which we would say is a CECE. The timelines actually show that the bike pedestrian path on the upper deck could actually occur sooner than the third lane. We are looking at the possibility of also doing the third lane as a categorical exemption, categorical exclusion, but we'll probably need to bring that back to you as far as the ultimate feasibility for that. We want to get a little bit further into the technical studies that are required before we actually make that change to the project schedule. So that I'm going to hand things over to Mr. McElhaney. He has a few things to say about the project as well.
Thanks, Chris. Good job. Again, Dan McElhaney, your Chief Deputy District Director for Caltrans in the Bay Area. And Bijan and I are quite appreciative of the MOU partnership, Caltrans, MTC, TAM board members, commissioners that have been engaged. But particularly also we want to, don't forget, Federal Highway Administration, which is really given us the opportunity to do this 4-year pilot with safety in mind, but also congestion relief for that evening commute on the eastbound, and multimodal access for bikes and peds on the upper deck. So it's really coming together to this point very well, so thank you for that teamwork. And we're going to do as much as possible. We're taking the challenge clearly on this schedule to do as much as possible in parallel, noting all the elements of the project that Chris mentioned, and the environmental reviews and preliminary design that needs to be done. We're going to look at all things possible. We've had some good success on other projects here in the Bay Area. The challenges will be the approaches to the bridge and emerging areas and the traffic operational issues. We'll work through that, as well as making sure when we do get into construction, we minimize our time in construction to get these improvements out so we can finish starting this pilot. And Federal Highways reminded us, and of course we're all in tune with this, is a smart bridge with good incident response, incident response plan, enhanced congestion mitigation, and supporting CHP enforcement will really make this a great pilot moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Mr. Kennedy, would you want to go?
Thank you. Well, it's been 11 months since we as a commission met in Sonoma County and we talked about what we could do to make every day look like Columbus Day. This is one of the things that we could do. Get more out of the same. Use one bridge differently to make a real impact on commute hour congestion, and also to help fulfill a long-standing vision for a Bay Trail that actually encircles the entire Bay Area. 2 projects, 1 bridge. I'm very excited that we're here at this point today. I think that it has a number of features. Obviously, the multimodal aspects of it reflect Caltrans and the Secretary of Transportation's commitment to moving out Caltrans into that kind of an agency. It also gives us the opportunity to explore the feasibility over time of this Bay Trail extension that closes this key gap. And I think there's a bonus for the community of Richmond in that they will get a permanent improvement to their own trail in their community that will also lead to Point Milani, which is a wonderful park that I think the Richmond community has long wanted to have safe access to. So a number of benefits from that. I want to thank and acknowledge that Chair Worth and I have worked side by side on this. We both have an end of the bridge in our districts and as commissioners. We brought our sales tax authority staff. We've each worked very well together with BATA staff, Caltrans staff, and as I've been reporting along the way to the commission, we really took a top-down approach working with the secretary and the director of Caltrans, Malcolm Doherty, to understand that if we're going to make a change happen in the Bay Area, we're going to have to take some risks, we're going to have to do things differently, and certainly that is embedded in this project right now. So the significant progress we've made since March of last year when our commission said, let's try a pilot project there, and then of course we included funding, as Chris mentioned, so this project is fully funded through its implementation if we go forward today. We have selected a design team that's been working closely with everyone. They have come up with a conceptual design that addresses a number of the issues, some of which have really emerged as we've taken a deeper look at it. And before us we have the framework for a decision document that would be signed. It really establishes the commitment of both BATA and Caltrans to make this project happen. So a lot of progress in 1 year, but when you look at that timeline, to take a bridge that already exists, that was used and had a third lane for many years, that was used after the 1989 earthquake as a third lane, and to say it's going to take us 4 years from the day we sat in Sonoma till the day we can cut a ribbon to let something that's there and waiting to go forward is really problematic. It's unacceptable. And I think that the Caltrans staff, the BATA staff, our agencies, and even the resource agencies have all recognized that we can do better than that. As Chris said, they're willing to look at that. And we're willing to work together with them, Chair Worth and I know. Also, you'll see before us a letter from Assemblymember Levine, and the Assembly member recognizes that, you know, congestion in the Bay Area is a tremendous challenge, and anything that we can do, every incremental improvement we can make will be appreciated. And so he's introduced his bill, AB 157, and has also said that he'd welcome working with our committee and our staffs to come up with elements of his legislation that could help us get this job done quicker, combining our determination, the staff's imagination, and the risk management elements that could be incorporated in this to compact the timeline. That's really the next and unfinished business. And so at the appropriate time, after questions have been asked and others have spoken, I would like to make this motion to support the staff recommendation, but I would be adding a condition that would ask the staff of Caltrans, BATA, the Transportation Authority of Marin, and the Contra Costa Transportation Authority to get together, explore all the options for compacting the timeline, and then report back to this committee within the next 2 months as to what they think is possible if we're willing to support them in that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can actually accept that. We're under the committee, right? We can actually accept the motion now. Of course, you want a second?
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
I'm not a member of the committee.
Oh, you're not a member. Okay, Commissioner Worth.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, right.
Well, okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Kinsey for those comments and his leadership and recognizing that this is a partnership with the Caltrans, with BATA, with Contra Costa and Richmond. And I know Commissioner Glover and I have been working closely with our staff and on the Contra Costa side of the bridge to ensure that these improvements reflect all of our priorities. And I guess one of the things, looking at this as Commissioner Kinsey acknowledged in his remarks, was it as the project, the depth of this project really has become much more apparent as we've gotten into this to understand what the constraints are and what the what we need to do to make this truly a good project. So I just had a couple of questions. First of all, again, I think it's important the safety improvements that would come from this, both from the standpoint of bicycle and pedestrian, as well as the sight distances. I think this yellow chart is very insightful to show what the sight distances are around that corner on the eastern side, and that's a real priority for us to be able to improve the sight distances from people coming off the bridge, and particularly going onto the Richmond Parkway and on that whole corridor. So I guess with that I had a couple of questions. First of all, in terms of the traffic studies, are we still in process, or does this pretty much show the completion of the fact that adding the auxiliary lane, adding the third lane with the improvements down to the Richmond Parkway intersection will be able to accommodate the traffic flow? We're not moving a traffic congestion from one side of the bridge to the other. Or are we still in the process of fine-tuning those fair and peer studies? That's my first.
Yes, those studies are actually still in process, and what we find is that the traffic operational analysis is actually has the longest lead time, is contributing probably more to the schedule anxiety, or it's probably more than anxiety, it's frustration that we're seeing. So right now, the status is that the existing conditions report and the model that's developed to kind of replicate what is going on today is scheduled to be completed next week, which we will be submitting to the department for their review. And then the full operational analysis probably will not be complete until this summer.
Okay, so the way that works is you do the traffic analysis. It shows how traffic will perform under different conditions, and then that kind of informs what other kinds of improvements might be needed to include it, such as whether it's signalization at that intersection, or whatever kinds of things might accommodate that traffic flow.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think the intent for the project is to make this a self-mitigating project, so that whatever ramifications of delivering more traffic to the city of Richmond and Contra Costa County, those improvements are built into the project scope.
Okay, perfect. Because I know you mentioned earlier in the report that 30% of that traffic coming off the bridge goes onto the Richmond Parkway. So that's the importance of running that auxiliary lane all the way to the Richmond Parkway exit.
That's correct. Rather than just shift the bottleneck, we'd rather solve the problem.
No, and I think it's important to recognize that this project benefits both Contra Costa commuters as well as Marin commuters, because so many people from Contra Costa are coming from jobs in Marin County east in the evening, and that this will improve that flow. So I guess the final thing, Dan, I just had a question for you. You mentioned a cooperative agreement. You just mentioned Caltrans, TAM, and BATA, but I assume that any cooperative agreement would include both TAM as well as CCTA.
Well, I had mentioned the MOU that's in your packet, which emphasizes the path forward. But I would agree with any cooperative agreement that's needed. We'll be sure to include all agencies involved.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Okay, we have two more speakers. One is Commissioner Haggerty and Lewis, and then we have 4 cars. And mechanics. So we're going to multiple.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, on slide, the BATA budget of not page 14, it shows that on the BATA budget there's $13 million. If I'm reading this correctly, there's $13 million into the.
Can you speak up, please? Speak up.
I'm speaking as loud as I can.
Oh, okay, well.
$13 million for the bridge, for the movable barrier, and there's the current estimate. There's no. Am I reading that correctly?
That's the 13 million. The $13 million was an operational cost, maybe placeholder is the best way to say it, to operate the movable barrier system like it's operated on the Golden Gate Bridge for a period of 25 years. So I think
Go ahead.
Commissioner Haggerty, if I could, Andrew Vermeer, Deputy Executive Director. We had originally done the PSR with Caltrans back in 2007 with BATA resources, and that assumption was trying to get the approval to get bikes on the bridge, which would require the movable barrier. When we brought the budget forward last year, we just took those numbers and put them into the BATA estimate. What we're working on now with Caltrans is trying to identify, as Chris mentioned, a project that doesn't require that barrier to move every day. In addition to that, one of the items that we are also going to further explore, since this is a pilot project, is whether or not K-rail or something much cheaper would be a better solution in the interim. We do want to minimize the investment so that we don't overbuild something that is a pilot that might not turn out to work well in the future. So during the course of the analysis, we will also be evaluating whether that's a good option to explore, which would drop dramatically the cost of the bike path. And it would also not require any operational costs.
What would be, I'm sorry, what I'm trying to figure out is what is the reasoning for the movable barriers? Is it just because it's a 4-year pilot and at some point it may come out, or do you plan on moving it off?
Well, Commissioner Haggerty, we would hope not to move it off often, but one of the dialogue points that we've had back and forth with the department during the decision to get this far with actually allowing bikes and peds on there was an analysis of what that bike path width might be. And so we've actually cycled through a 4-foot width, which would not allow pedestrians and it wouldn't even allow two-way traffic, to a full 10-foot width that we showed today. We've also explored the potential for pullouts that might be included by moving parts of the rail to add a refuge zone. So the movable barrier gives us a couple of things. One, it allows us to modify the width if necessary. If we feel the cars need a little bit more width, we can still maintain maybe an 8-foot bike path. We could study whether or not a refuge area makes sense. We can also use it for maintenance activities because it can actually articulate all the way across the bridge and the maintenance folks could be behind it for work on either side. So there are a bunch of benefits to the movable barrier that we want to analyze, but as I mentioned, we are also trying to make sure if this is a pilot that we don't overinvest in something that may not prove to be a valuable asset in the future.
Commissioner Lewis?
Thank you. That basically answered my questions. So I look forward to hearing the studies because the other option is save a lot of money. So I'm interested in that. So I'll just make the motion then to approve the staff's recommendation.
Okay, I'll accept that. Is there a second? Is there a second? Second. Okay, second. We still need to continue with Commissioner McKenzie and then we'll go to Parker.
Yes, Mr. Chair, under discussion, just wanted to note the letter in front of you from the North Bay Leadership Council, which is a group of people involved in industry and commerce. The length of the 101 corridor, not just Marin County, but also Sonoma County. And anecdotally, as someone who uses this particular transportation route, I'm with Commissioner Kinsey. The quicker the better. Thanks a lot.
Okay. So we have cards from speakers who turned in. We have the first one is from Renee Rivera, and then Laura Thompson, and then Emily Oakland. If you guys wouldn't mind, maybe we can hold this for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Renee Rivera. I'm from Bike East Bay, formerly East Bay Bicycle Coalition. And as we've been working on this, getting bikes access on the bridge since 1977, I couldn't agree with Commissioner Kinsey more. We need to make this happen right away. So I just wanted to really come up and quickly say my thanks to BATA staff for including us in conversations early on and really allowing us to give some input that I think has substantially improved the project. I wanted to particularly thank Commissioners Worth and Kinsey for their leadership and for carrying the water up to Sacramento to really come up with a path that's going to truly complete the Bay Trail and serve everyone. I think it's going to be a very exciting project. Our members are really looking forward to using this path both to commute and for recreation. And I also want to say thanks to Bijan and to Caltrans for really excellent open dialogue about this project. So we really have we fully support this project, urge you to approve it, and have really appreciated the dialogue all along the way, and of course Executive Director Heminger's leadership on bringing this project forward as well. So thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Laura Thompson, and I serve as the Bay Trail Project Manager at the Association of Bay Area Governments. And I'm thrilled to be here to support this recommendation that's before you. The Bay Area is building a 500-mile regional hiking and biking trail around the San Francisco Bay, and that will connect 9 counties and 47 cities and cross 7 toll bridges. So I want to make one small correction to the staff report that said there were 270 miles of Bay Trail that are complete. There are actually 340 miles of Bay Trail that are complete, and that turns out to be the distance between San Francisco and Santa Barbara. So we've actually already built a pretty substantial resource in the Bay Area, and there's bicycle and pedestrian access across 4.5 toll bridges today. So I'm thrilled that you have this recommendation before you. I'd also like to thank Chair Worth, Commissioner Kinsey, Commissioner Sartipi, and staff from BADA and from District 4. This is a milestone for the Bay Trail. It's a milestone for the Bay Area as we work to reduce congestion and encourage active transportation. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Emily Lover from the Bay Area Council, and we represent 250 of the region's largest employers. Rising traffic congestion and commute delays across the region is a serious concern for employers and their employees who are finding it increasingly difficult to get to and from work. We're looking for fast action by public agencies to address this traffic crisis across the region, and in the case of Marin, we have a situation where traffic has gotten really bad, and we fortunately have an easy solution to fix it. Commuters throughout Marin are currently experiencing unprecedented gridlock caused by overcapacity on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. A third lane on the bridge would vastly improve overall traffic flow, mitigate environmental impacts caused by extra traffic delay, and enhance the safety of the highway by diminishing the likelihood of collisions. Fortunately, the lane is already built and should be opened as soon as possible. On behalf of the Council, I'm pleased to share my support for the I-580 Access Improvement Project and to add a third auto lane on the Richmond Bridge, which will deliver desperately needed congestion relief throughout Marin. We support the proposal to move forward with the design process, which will shave some time off the project, but the Bay Area Council is still looking for ways to further expedite this process. Supporting the contract amendment is an important step in that direction, and we look forward to working with you to further explore opportunities to alleviate traffic gridlock immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we also have a speaker from the Marin County Bicycle Coalition.
Good morning, Alicia O'Loughlin from the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. The Marin County Bicycle Coalition would like to thank you for helping to move this very important project forward. Non-motorized access on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge has been one of our biggest priorities since our formation in 1998, and it's actually the project that we're most frequently asked about by our members and North Bay cyclists. Bicycle pedestrian access on the bridge is long overdue, as we all know, and will provide a much-needed, vital, non-motorized connection between the North and East Bays. And will also provide Bay Area residents with another alternative to leave their car behind to help reduce traffic congestion, improve air quality, and to use an active, healthy mode of transportation for commuter, utilitarian, and recreational purposes. We're very, very excited to see this project moving forward, and we'd like to thank you for recognizing how important it is to close this critical gap in the Bay Area's non-motorized transportation network. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Wiener?
Yes. So I'd like to make a motion to amend as described by Commissioner
Okay.
I'll include that in my motion.
Okay, thank you. Want a second on that? Okay. So, does anyone else wish to be recognized? We're ready for a vote on this. Is there any objection? Has all been voted aye? Seeing none, that will be the order. Passed unanimously. Congratulations, a great project. So we have one more item.